I think one of the longest running hot topics of debate over the last two or so decades would have to be the conversation between books that have been written and movies that have been adapted after their book counterparts, right? And I wouldn't exactly say that it's a hot topic. It's not like it's fresh off the press or anything like that. It's I feel like been an overarching conversation for so long now that it's not really considered topical, but it's something that I wanted to throw my 2 cents into because I feel like there's some things that are just being missed in the conversation. Now, when I talk about this in general, the book to movie adaptation, it's coming from somebody who grew up reading a decent amount of books. Not a lot of books. I was never like a book enthusiast. I was never heavily into reading in that respect, but I did read enough that I think this comes from a pretty fair standpoint. With that being said, of course, I am a movie enthusiast. That's what I'm into, is film development and directing. However, I was doing some research the other day, and I, found on a website a statement like this, and I think this is generally how a lot of book readers and people who watch the movie adaptations of books feel. It said, books can let you imagine the setting or events happening in the story. They are also more detailed than movies because movies sometimes leave out some important details. Characters are described much better and with more detail, etc., etc. Okay. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like, those are all invalid arguments because it's true. However, I do want to bring something new to the table here because I find the most common complaint of people who read the books is it's this very widely complained thing that the movies are never as good as the books, right? You always hear people coming out saying, "Oh, it was good. It wasn't as good as the book. It never will be." I think we experienced that, heavily with movies like Harry Potter, Hunger Games. Let's see, Maze Runner, Divergent. There's always at least half the people who are saying, "Oh, it was nothing compared to the books," and I get really tired of that. I certainly did years ago. I am now. I have a proposal that might make things easier for both movie enthusiasts and book readers alike. Why don't we try watching the movies before we read the books? And I realize that this will only fit a certain demographic of people, right? Because if the book came out, if you discovered the book years before the movie came out, then obviously that's not a possibility. But I think a lot of us will hear that movies come out and then rush to reading the book before they see a movie. Why do you do that? I have siblings who will do that. I have friends who will do that. And I think that's what I'm arguing here right now, is maybe we can stop doing that. Maybe we can stop that culture of rushing to read the book before you see the movie. I think that's one of the most outrageous things in the world. And let me explain why. First off, one of the biggest arguments is that the books are always more detailed, that it's what causes a letdown for the movie. So if that's the case, let's pretend like that's true for just a minute. Why are you preparing yourself to be let down? Why are you going to read the book? It's like, hey, movie's coming out. Let's get disappointed. Let's run read the book. Let's go do that, and then we'll run off and we'll scamper off to get all disappointed. I just don't understand the concept of that. Additionally, I think watching the movie first can help an experience, moving forward as far as the surprise effect of it. I think a good example of this is my older brother, who has some beef with the last Harry Potter movie. Now, I personally consider the last Harry Potter movie, which is The Deathly Hallows Part 2, one of the greatest book to movie adaptations ever. That one specifically, I think, was very well done. I haven't read the last Harry Potter book, but I think it's a fantastic movie on a cinematic level, on a directing level, on a writing level. It's just beautifully done. But not just my brother, but I know other people who just can't stand it, and it's one of their least favorites because of a few discrepancies between it and the book. Now, hearing about the discrepancy, because they'll explain it to me from the book, I think, okay, yeah, it makes sense that they'll do that in the book, but I would have never noticed that or cared if they hadn't told me, and I still don't care, quite frankly. It's just hilarious to me that you see these circumstances and people getting themselves riled up. Now, if you're one of these people, I'd recommend, if you have the chance, watch the movie first, then read the book. If you do that, you can have the best of both experiences, in my opinion. You watch the movie, you enjoy it for what it is, then you read the book, and wow, look at that. It's even better. That's great. You can enjoy both for what they're worth. Now, I realize that this argument doesn't hold up against everything. And I'm certainly not defending all movie adaptations from books. We've got some really big duds in the past. I mean, I for myself have actually experienced, and we're coming from an experience where I was incredibly disappointed by the movie. I read The Giver in high school, and then they announced the movie was coming out years later, and I was all excited. And boy, was that a disappointment! Oh my goodness, that taught me a valuable lesson. I think from there on is where I adopted this viewpoint. I think this is an interesting thing to look at too. If we look at a quote from RVA Weekly that I found on the web, it just simply says, "Books can describe feelings and emotions and motives much better than any movie will ever be able to do." No, that's I disagree. A good book also offers a much more immersive experience because the author can make you think and experience the same things that the main character is going through. That is something that a movie just can't do. I also disagree. Let me go back and rephrase that statement into something that could be seen as something true. Instead, saying the author can make you think and experience the same things that the main character is going through. That is something that a poorly made movie just can't do. And with that, I agree. I think in general, if you hand the script and the story to a director who wants to change everything and values the book on no levels, then yeah, that can certainly be the case. But I, for one, know a lot more movies I've seen that have stirred my deep emotions than books I've read. You could argue that's because I haven't read as many books as I have movies. That may be true, but I would go further to argue that the ratio of movies I've seen have been more stirring than the ratio of books that I've read. And I'm going to have a lot of people disagreeing with me on this. And my point isn't really to create a purpose of trying to argue that movies are better. Because there are books I've read that are significantly better than their movie counterparts. But I disagree with a lot of what this said, even reaching back to how it says, how books can describe feelings and show details better than movies can. That's not true. As a matter of fact, factually, that's not true. Because a movie actually shows you details, right? You may think in your mind that you're seeing more details in the book because it's taking a sentence to describe every detail. So it makes you think that you're seeing more details in the book. In reality, you're not seeing nearly as many details in the book as one in the movie, because guess what? In the movie, you see it all. It's right there. You may not notice what it's doing, that it's more detailed, because it doesn't take 5 chapters to world build. Instead, it takes about 2 seconds of taking a glance, and there it is. Okay, here, let me just go ahead and show you really quick. Let me give you a perfect example. We're going to take a little snippet out of the very first Harry Potter book where you're being introduced to the Hogwarts castle, right? It says, the narrow path had opened up suddenly onto the edge of a great black lake. Perched atop a high mountain on the other side, its windows sparkling in the starry sky, was a vast castle with many turrets and towers. The fleet of little boats moved off all at once, gliding across the lake, which was as smooth as glass. Everyone was silent, staring up at the great castle overhead. It towered over them as they sailed nearer and nearer to the cliff on which it stood. Beautiful. Or, just check this out. Ready, and go. There, you see? Let's replay it one more time, just so we can get a glimpse of how much easier this can be. Ready? One more time. Go. Right, you kind of get the point here. At the end of the day, I strongly believe that movies give us opportunities to see things and experience things that books can never provide for us. The book is for the mind, and it's kind of food for the mind, and I admire them for that, and I think they certainly have their place. But when it comes to movies, it lets you relax, and it lets you see something and experience something. Because of that, I will always stand by movies as the greatest form of media. And I think more times than not, we don't give them enough credit for doing as much as they did to try and do what they accomplished. All right, guys, that's about it for today. Thanks so much for watching. Make sure to hit the like button and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, because I'll be coming out with more frequent videos like this. Later, guys.